Hey, so this is Mr. Kelly. We're talking about describing data. Welcome to Unit 4. I'm coming at you from Kaiser Slaughtern High School. Hey, tell you what, if you learned nothing in Unit 3, at least you learned that if you only have a day to live, do a Mr. Bean unit because that day will seem like 5 years. It'll really extend the life right there. We're going to be talking about data. It's stuff that you should know. You've talked about data before. We have heard the term data and we've used mean, median, and mode and range. And so, what I want you to do is just pause the video and write down these. And then, when you're done writing them down, then I'll talk about them. So, pause them right now. We're going to save some time. Pause it, write them down, and then we'll talk. Okay, so we're back. Hopefully, that wasn't too difficult. We just write these down. Data is plural. Data are, that really messes with some students. One fact or statistic that you go out and you gather is called a datum, but data are plural. They are facts, statistics that you go out and you collect, measurements. It helps you learn about something. It could be anything. They don't have to be numbers. It could be your favorite sports team, how you feel about school lunch, things of that nature. But for the most part, we like to put numerical values with it so that we can average them, like the mean. Okay, if you remember, the mean is the average. We add them all up and divide. Or maybe sometimes it's better to find the median. Okay, to find the median, you got to put the list in order and you pick the one in the middle. When do you want to do that? Well, if you have, a couple values that are so far out that it messes up your mean, then generally we use the median. The mode is the value that occurs the most. Okay, and sometimes there's no mode, and that's okay. If there are two modes, we say it's bimodal, but we're not going to really talk too much about that in this unit. But that's what it's called if you have two modes. Sometimes when you graph it, there'll be two spots where a lot of values occur. We say that's bimodal. And then the last one is called the range. And sometimes students confuse this with domain and range, but this is a different type of range. We're just talking about the difference between the highest and the lowest value in a data set. We're not talking about y values on a graph. That's just a different type of range. Same idea, but it kind of applied differently. So for this unit, when we talk about range, we're just talking about finding the highest value and the lowest value. You find the difference, which means subtract, and then you come up with a value that way. So we're going to start right away by looking at an example. We're looking at 6 naps that Mr. Bruss took over a 2-week period. These are in minutes. It's always important to know like what you're looking at. Just a bunch of numbers up here, and I know students are pretty bad sometimes. They just kind of go to the numbers and start doing stuff, trying to get it done, but they don't really read into it. So when you're working with data, it's really important to know like what this is. 38 naps, 38 what pillows on the bed, but now this is the length of the nap in minutes. So that's a 38-minute nap. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to see how well you do. We're going to pause the video again because I want to save time and make this video as short as possible. But I want you to pause the video. I want you to find the mean. That means we have to add them up and divide by how many we got? 6. Find the mode, the median, and the range. All right, pause the video. Go. It's on you. Okay, let's see how you did pulling back all those skills from math, 5, 6, 7, all that stuff you did in middle school. So to find the mean, what you need to do, add them all together and divide. So I'm going to bring up this calculator here. Here's a calculator. Now, as you notice, this is the same calculator that we use in our classrooms. It's an 84, so you'll notice all the, by the way, timeout. You're going to find out I'm going to do a lot of calculator stuff. So you're going to need a calculator, and I'm going to show you how we can kind of help you out with that in a few minutes. But here's our calculator. I'm going to add them all together, and I hit enter, and it's 270. And I need to divide by 6 because there's 6 numbers there. But again, this is review for you. So I take that 270, we hit 270, and we divide by 6. And it's going to tell me the mean of 45. Well, that's all fine and dandy. But some things I wanted to show you that you can't do. All right, this is what you can't do. So I've gone in the calculator and I've retyped the first line. I hit divided by 6. And so when I hit enter, I should get the right answer, correct? No, you knew that's not going to work because I said you can't do it. Come on, God, I can't do that. Because look, you didn't use parentheses correctly. If you use the calculator like this and you just add them all and do divided by 6, it's only dividing the last number by 6. And remember, when you do the mean, you got to add them all up. I always like to hit enter, and then I hit divided by 6. I get the answer. If you want to use it all at once, then you just have to use parentheses. That's not too hard. Okay, so I've typed it all in there. I'm using parentheses. So I want to add the top and then divide by 6, and I'll get my answer, which is 45 there. That makes everybody happy. So The mean of that first set of data will be 45. 45 what? It's going to be 45 minutes. Okay. The mode, if I look at it, which one occurs the most? That is also 45. That's going to happen. The median, if you remember, is the number in the middle, but you got to put them in order first. These are already in order. You're welcome. You're welcome very much. But these are all in order, so I need to find the number in the middle. So there's, like, some teachers tell kids to cross off, but we're going to get two numbers here in the middle, so you need to add them up and divide by 2. Because there's no number in the middle, we need to actually find the average or the mean of these two numbers. So 44 plus 45, and maybe you can do this in your head. It's the number between both of those, right in the middle. That's going to give you 44.5. Okay, that's not too difficult. And lastly, the range is the highest minus the lowest. And we call the highest the maximum value and the minimum value. All right, so the maximum minus the minimum, that's going to equal 20. And again, this is all review. So what I want you to do, let's do this example. You do Mr. Bean, not Mr. Breast, but Mr. Bean snaps. You fill all this out, and then you can check it with me when you come back. Pause the video. Go. Okay, so I'm back, and I'm going to be honest. I used my calculator, and I got a mean of 45. There's no mode. I don't need a calculator for that. The median is 36 because I got to go between these two values right there. And the range is 82. I subtract the highest from the lowest. So you might be asking, hey, like, I want to use that calculator thing, but I don't have one at my house. All right, first off, I'm going to show you how to do it in the calculator. But let's talk about if you don't have one at your house, then we have some apps that you can use on your smartphone. If you have an Apple iPhone or an iPad, is that what that thing's called? Anyways, we have the iOS phone. It's called Graph and Calc app 83, and that will give you what is pretty close to this calculator. It's pretty close. If you have an Android, then we're going to go with the Wabbit Emu app. You download that and you install it, and it'll ask you, do you want me to download a ROM file from the internet? And you just choose yes, and you can choose which calculator you want. I always tell my students to choose the last one because it's the most fancy. All right, so that comes from the Android store. This comes from the iOS, the Apple store. You can get both of those. This one is, guess how much money? 99 cents. You will have to pay 99 cents. I know. The commitment is unbelievable. But this one over here at Android is free 99. So you don't have to pay nothing for that one. So let's see how to use this calculator. I listed all the steps right here, but I'm just going to go through. By the way, those are my two beautiful daughters. Look at those guys. And I'm going to show you in the calculator here. Look, someone's been using this calculator. A lot of the times, if we want to reset the calculator, which is a good idea, then we can just go like this. We hit the second button, and we hit the memory. We go down into the memory, and we reset it. So we hit a 7, a 1, we reset everything, and then we hit 2. And what that'll do is clear the memory out. By the way, if you own your calculator and you do this, it's going to clear out everything. I'm just giving you a heads up. So any data or programs or anything in your calculator will be gone. But what it does is it makes the calculator brand new. All the settings are standardized so that they're the same when you get it in the store. So I'm going to show you how to go in and enter these numbers into your calculator. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go into your lists. You're going to put these into a list. So we hit the stat button, we hit edit, and it takes us to our lists. And we see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lists. And actually we have as many as we probably need here. And so our numbers are 18, 25, 30, 42. Let me put those in right now. Okay, almost done here. 55 and 100. And each time I put a number in, I move down. And you notice the numbers are right there. When you're finished, then you need to quit. So the quit button's right there. We're going to quit putting numbers in. And it takes us back to what I call the home screen. Okay, so the home screen is right here. Now I can basically do whatever I want if I go into the list menu. So I hit second. The stat button takes me into the list menu, and I go over to the math, and look at all your options. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. So the mean is choice 3. Find the mean of what? Well, I put all my numbers in list 1, so hit second, go down to L1. Okay, you can close the parenthesis if you want, don't need to. Hit it, enter, and you get 45. And so that's how I got the 45 there. If you don't have a calculator, that's fine. Just do it by hand. It's not a big deal. But if you have a calculator, saves you time, a little bit of energy. If you want to check out those smartphone apps, then you're good to go there too. So the whole point of this, well, we want to look at the numbers here and we want to compare the two. That's generally where we're going with this. We want to look at breast and look at bean and talk about their naps and see how they differ from each other. So I want you to do that right now. Pause the video and answer these questions. Who takes longer naps and whose naps are more consistent? All right, pause the video. Go. Complete sentence. Okay, so we're back, and this is what I came up with when I looked at the data from above. Did you notice they have the same mean time, 45 minutes? However, Mr. Brust's median time is much higher than Mr. Bean's. Therefore, I'm going to side with Brust taking longer naps. Mr. Brust's naps are more consistent as well because Bean has a greater range. Let's look at this data. All right, so I'm going to clear some of this stuff out so we can just look at it. Whoops. I'm going to clear this out so we can look at the numbers. The mean is the same, 45 and 45. But if you notice, see how breasts are all kind of close together? And the range tells us that they're all kind of close together. We look at beans, you go from 100 to 18. That's a huge difference. And because he has that 100 there, it has pulled his average way up to 45, where it looks like they're the same. I mean, check that out. His median's 36. It's in the middle here. He has a 36. The range is 82. That's a huge difference. But that 100, let's play pretend. All right. So let's pretend that 100 became 1,000. What would happen? Would the median change? No, the median wouldn't change. It'd stay 36 because it's the average of those two. Would the range change? Yes. Would the mean change? Yes. The mean would go way up if I changed that 100 to 1,000. So these are the things we need to be aware about when we have data. We need to be aware that, you know what, if we have what's called an outlier, a number that's so high, it can pull the mean up towards it, then the median is a better choice to use. So that is what we're going to do in this one here. So the question is how much does the data, how differentiated, that's a big word. What's the variability of this data? How much does it vary? Is it basically the same? Or is there a greater variation in the data? We need a number besides the range to look at that, a little more precise in the range. And so that's where the standard deviation comes in. Now, I get it. The standard deviation looks ugly. I mean, this is basically, ugh. This is what I see in the mirror every day. But it's not that difficult. So what I've done is I've broken it down into several steps. And what we're going to do is kind of work through a process to find the standard deviation. And hopefully at the end of it, you kind of understand why the standard deviation calculates the way it does. Okay, so let's look at breast naps in minutes. All right, so I put them all right here. We know that the mean was 45. We figured that out before. So I'm going to write that over here somewhere. So the mean of breast naps is 45. So what this stands for here, we want to find the mean of the data set. We did that. Ta-da! Congratulations. We want to subtract the mean from each value. Okay, so what is 38 minus 45? That's going to give us what? -7? And what is 40 minus 45? That's going to give us a -5. And we get a -1. And a 0 and a 0. And 58 minus 45 is 13. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to find out from each data point for all of breast, all of these individual numbers here, this one and this one and this one. We're going to find how far away from the mean is it. Look at beans down here. A lot of them are further away. They're all over 100 from 45. That's 55. But breasts are all kind of close. So what we did is we took the number and we subtracted the mean. That's step 2. Now we want to square these numbers, square the differences. The differences are when you subtract. So when we square this, it becomes positive. All these numbers should always be positive because when you square a negative, it's positive. So this one becomes 49. -5 squared, 25. -1 squared, remember squared means times yourself. 13 times 13, 169. But these are all positive numbers. Okay, the next step, we want to add these up. We're going to find out how much the differences are. So we squared them. We're going to add these up. By the way, when we add these up, what do we get? When I add them up, I get 244. And then this part's kind of, it's not really tricky, but you gotta be aware of it. You divide by n minus 1. Now, n equals, let's write this down, total number of values. So we need to see how many values. It's basically what you divide by when you find the average, the mean. And so we divided by 6. So we need to divide by n minus 1, which means 1 less. Now, the reason we do this, without getting too technical, why don't we just divide by n like the average, is because we're going to use this to represent all of Brust's snaps, not just these specific 6. And they have found out that when you use n minus 1, it's closer. You don't have to worry about it if you just remember n minus 1. Okay, so we're going to do 244 divided by 6 minus 1, which is 5. So this works out to 244 divided by 5, which is 48.8. Okay, we've done that. Now we need to take the square root. This number right here is called the variance. It tells you how much these are all varying. When we take the square root, remember that's the square root thing, 48.8. Let me show you how to do that in a calculator. Those guys. All right, so here's the calculator. So 48.8. All right, if you want to find, I just did this wrong. If you want to find the square root of 48.8, then we're just going to go down here. We're going to hit second. See, it's right there in blue. All right, then we're going to type in our 48.8. See how I did that in the wrong order last time? And we're going to get 6.985. Yuck. Kind of drag that on here. They're going to let me do that. Okay, so we're going to get 6 points. Man, that thing. I'll put that right there. So 6.9856. Now, did I say? I didn't say. What are we going to go with? Okay, normally the nearest tenth. So the nearest tenth means 6.9. Okay, but the next number is an 8. So you got to round that 9 up to a 0, which rounds up the 6 to a 7. So when you take the square root of that, we're going to round it off to 7.0. Did everybody follow that? It's 6.9856, blah, blah, blah. Normally rounded to the nearest tenth. This is an 8, so that makes this number go up to a 0, which makes that number go up to a 7. So 7.0 is the standard deviation. Okay, so in summary here, you find the mean first, and then you subtract it from each number. All right, that's what these numbers are. Then you square them, times themselves, -7 times -7. That'll give you this row right here. Add them all together and divide by 1 less than the number of numbers. So there's 6 numbers here, so we divide by 5. After we add them all up, we get that number, and then we take the square root. All right, it's not really that difficult, but it seems like a lot of steps. So you do need to practice it. So guess what? Find the standard deviation of Mr. Bean's, not Mr. Brust's. So you have to use these numbers right here. So plug in these numbers right here, and let's see how they compare to Mr. Brust. So right now, pause the video, and you find the standard deviation all by yourself. Do this for legit, because you got to learn how to do it. Ready, set, go. Yikes, that was ugly. But we know that the mean is 45, so let's subtract 45 from each one of these. These are the values we saw above. We get these values here, and we square it. We get these values on the bottom. Okay, remember they should always be positive on the bottom because you're squaring, and that makes everything positive. You know, negative times a negative is positive. So then finding the sum of the squares, we get 4,488. We just add all these together. And then when we divide by 5, because that's 1 less than the number, then we get 897.6. Take the square root of that, and we're going to get about 29.95997. And you'll notice that a lot of these are super ugly, so you're going to have to round it. Basically, you got to draw the line right here. Okay, we look at the next number. It's a 5, so it goes up. So that 9 goes up to a 0. That 9 goes up to a 0, which means that goes up to a 3. The standard deviation is 30.0. So let's look at this standard deviation. The other standard deviation we got was 7. All right, so that's telling you approximately how far off each of the data points is from the mean. All right, it's a standard deviation. That means how far off from the mean on average or all the data points. So if you have a high number, that means a lot of the data points are far away. If you have a lower number, that means they're closer to the mean, which means there's less variability. Okay, variability means that things vary a lot and there's a lot of differences. So, what does the standard deviation tell us about the difference between Mr. Brust's and Mr. Bean's naps? Well, if I were answering that question, here is how I would sum it up. I would say Mr. Bean's naps have a higher standard deviation than Mr. Brust's. Therefore, there's much more variability in Mr. Bean's naps. Or the other way you could say it is Mr. Brust's naps have less variability because the standard deviation is smaller. Okay, so that's how you do standard deviation. By the way, if you wanted to, you could just throw that into your calculator, which I would love to do here. When you hit stat enter and you know that all your numbers are okay, you quit, and then you can go into where the list is. And if you go to standard deviation, which is choice 7, guess what? You can just put the list in there and it will give you everything we just did by hand. Can you use a calculator on the mastery check? For me, yes. That is absolutely why we have calculators. Okay, and with these last two, they want you to find an unknown variable. They'll tell you the mean or they'll tell you the median. So let's look at the first one where they tell you the mean. Okay, the mean is where you add them all up and divide, and it should equal, in this case, a 12. So I'm going to add them all up here. 13 plus 9 plus x plus another 9, a 4, and a 17. And then you have to divide by the number of numbers. I count 6, and that should equal 12. Okay, so combine like terms, very simple. X plus 52 all over 6 should equal 12. To solve this equation, we got to get rid of the 6 first, remember? So we multiply both sides by 6. They kind of cancel. We get x plus 52 will equal 72. Or after you subtract 52, x equals 20. That's easy enough for that one. For part B, all right, we have a median here. So the median's in the middle, and notice that 27 is higher than that 25. We have a 20, 25, and 90. So let's put the numbers in order. 20, 25, some number, and then a 90. All right, so the two, there is an even number of numbers here. So the middle two numbers will add up and average to that 27, that median. Okay, now if there was an odd number of numbers, I think this problem becomes a lot easier because you can find one number that's the median. You can just, suppose there's another number up here, then x would have to be 27 because it's in the middle. Okay, with this one, there's an even number, so we have to find, we make a little equation here. What do we got? X plus 25 equals 54. And when we solve it, what do you get there? 29. Woo! X equals 29. So that's how you do that one. So these are a little bit easier than the stuff we've done before. Remember, if you're having trouble with your calculator, please see your teacher. This is Mr. Kelly in Kaiserslautern. Remember, it's nice to be important. More important to be nice. See?